Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Later in the show, Dr. Len Necefer will tell us about the new documentary, Megadroughts and Indigenous Voices.
I'm Susan Levy, and with us on the phone today is Donovan Carr, Tribal Liaison at the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Now, the Arizona Department of Water Resources safeguards the health, safety, and economic welfare of the public by protecting, conserving, and enhancing Arizona's water supplies in a bold, thoughtful, and innovative manner. And as we all know, water is critical in Arizona and everywhere. Donovan, welcome to the show. We are so glad that you're coming on and going to give us more information on what the Arizona Department of Water Resources does. So welcome.
Thank you, Susan. It's such a pleasure to be here, and we're really excited to have this conversation today.
Yep. I can't wait to hear more. But before we get started, please tell us a little bit about your background and your journey with the Arizona Department of Water Resources.
Absolutely. So by way of introduction, my name's Donovan Carr. I'm Diné originally from northern Arizona on the Navajo Nation. I'm from a small community, Tuba City, Arizona. It's central to Monument Valley, Lake Powell, Grand Canyon, San Francisco Peaks. It's a beautiful region up there. And out of respect for my culture, I'd like to just quickly introduce myself and Diné and provide my clans really quickly. And so with respect to our cultures and our Indigenous community members, I just want to make sure I introduce myself properly to our communities. But my work with the Department of Water Resources, I actually just began this new position in May, and I am the first ever dedicated tribal liaison for the department. And I'm really proud and excited to be a part of the agency to pursue these goals here. Now, previously, I was with the Arizona Governor's Office on Tribal Relations, serving as a Tribal Affairs Advisor to the Governor and senior staff there, and agency directors about tribal consultation and engagement, and statutory requirements around tribal engagement for our state. Now, as you know, Susan, I was also the first ever tribal liaison for the Secretary of State's office, and worked there as well to connect our communities to the state and its resources and to streamline goals and some of the things that we hope to get done. So it's really exciting to continue that work here with the Department of Water Resources.
And the water, as you know, is so critical and I know so discussed in Arizona, and conservation as well as the drought. But I want to step back. Tell me a little bit about, what does the Arizona Department of Water Resources do? Do they oversee things, or is it advisory? What do you all do down there?
Absolutely great question. And really, the Department of Water Resources was created in 1980 when the state legislature passed the landmark Groundwater Management Act. Now, the Groundwater Management Act of 1980 seeks to conserve and protect Arizona water resources. It created the department, and it also authorized the department to regulate the mining of groundwater in active management areas around the state. We do a lot of things water related, but one of the most important things is that the Department of Water Resources Director serves as Arizona's principal negotiator on the Colorado River. And we know that that task is at the forefront of Arizona's water agenda now, as the state negotiates with other Colorado River states regarding new operating guidelines that'll go into effect after 2026, especially as we think about the drought and conservancy. So really important work.
So I've got a question. Well, tell me a little bit about what are the current Arizona water facts? Is it just the Colorado River that you're concerned with? Is it lakes and streams? Is it reservoirs? Is it the dam? What do you all do with that?
Absolutely. So groundwater consists of all the surface water, lakes and streams, and then there's the Colorado River water. Now, some really fun facts really quickly for water in Arizona is that 72% of water use is agricultural in our state. 22% is municipal, cities and towns. And then 6% of water used in Arizona is for industrial use. And when we talk about where does Arizona's water come from, our water supply is made up of the Colorado River, in-state rivers and streams, and then groundwater. And so the way that's divvied up is 36% of our water is Colorado River water, 41% is groundwater, 18% of our water is in-state rivers and streams, and then 5% is reclaimed water.
When you were talking about municipalities, that's residential water, right?
Right, cities and towns.
Okay, so that would be residential customers. And then the agriculture is throughout the entire state, and that could be anything from, I don't know, corn and cotton and anything else that we grow, right?
That's correct. And it's really, I think it's important as well to note, Susan, that for the awesome figures we're providing now, essentially that's all non-tribal water users for the state of Arizona. We understand that tribes have their own departments of water resources and they track their own data. And so for the data we're presenting, that would be Arizona non-tribal water users across the state.
Okay. So when the water comes down the Colorado River, and I apologize, I don't know a lot about water. So when it comes down the Colorado River, and let's say the city of Phoenix, then how do they get their water? Is that coming from the Colorado? Is that coming from another source? Is that like Tempe Town Lake? Or what happens?
Well, yeah, great question. Where does Phoenix get its water? The Central Arizona Project. And me being in northern Arizona originally, we don't really talk about the Central Arizona Project, but the project is infrastructure that moves Colorado River water from the river to the Phoenix metropolitan area, to central and southern Arizona. It's a landmark 336-mile canal system.
Okay, so once that water's coming down the Central Arizona Project, let's say it's hitting North Phoenix, and then what happens? Does it go to the city of Phoenix? I know they've got like holding tanks or treatment facilities. Yeah. Does it go there and then it gets treated and then into residential use? Or does it go down the canals, or what happens?
That's exactly how it works. It'll move in the canals from the Colorado River to Phoenix, to the Phoenix metropolitan area, and then it will go into the Phoenix water system.
Okay. So this is probably another not very smart question, but why is water important? I mean, besides the obvious of residential use and agriculture, I think people often overlook that you need water for everything, right?
You are right on the money, Susan. I think that, overall we do sometimes take water for granted, and we don't really see it as foundational to our communities and how necessary it is. Now, for our Indigenous communities, we understand that water is life and that conservancy and stewardship is absolutely important and absolutely necessary. So, Toi Ina, water is life. Now, we understand that too, as non-tribal water users. Water is so important to Arizona, especially in a desert climate. There's not development without it, and it's one of the foundational pieces of our economy. So, absolutely, very vital and essential to Arizona.
Well, and I know that's important. You're looking at the economy, and then you want to build new houses, but they lack the infrastructure, and then water becomes an issue. And I don't know, like, about evaporation and groundwater and surface water. Do we currently have enough water? I see different things in the media that, no, we're not in a drought. Yes, we're in a drought. Yes, you should conserve. No, you shouldn't. What all do you recommend that we do?
Absolutely. Great question. So the short answer is yes, we have enough water, but there's so many layers of context to this answer. In the long run, ADWR and the state's community of water users, we're committed to conserving and even augmenting these water supplies. But the crux of statewide conservation efforts is the 1980 Groundwater Management Act that I talked about a little bit before. The act that created ADWR, it tasked and empowered the department to manage areas in Arizona, manage the groundwater use, ensure best practices for water supplies, and to really monitor reducing water use and ensuring that it's used in the most wise way, I guess. So, yeah.
So cities and towns are addressing, like, how to conserve water separately, right? So, like, City of Mesa might be different than the City of Phoenix versus, Levine or something else. Is that correct? Each city and town can do their own PR and recommending to the residents what to do?
Absolutely. While we, the cities and towns work within the active management areas, each city and town has their own drought contingency plan. Sometimes the drought contingency plans are called conservancy plans, climate adaptation plans, drought mitigation plans, but each state has their own initiatives on conserving water.
Okay, I know I try to conserve water at home. I reuse my drinking water and put it in a bucket and water my plants outside, so to try to save every little drop. Do my little bit that I can do. So can you tell us, how do you all work with the tribes and water law and the Arizona Department of Water Resources? What all do you do in that arena?
Great question. We understand that water knows no boundaries. We draw our lines and we draw our boundaries on maps, but water doesn't know those lines and doesn't honor any of those boundaries. And we recognize that tribes and indigenous nations in the state, we need them to be able to protect our collective water resources and water supplies. Our partnerships are vital, and they're absolutely one of the most important things that we can do is to ensure these partnerships are healthy and they're ongoing to secure these water supplies. And then when we talk about water law and tribes, of course, the biggest issue facing the 22 tribes that are in Arizona today is really the settlement of water rights claims for each tribe. And it's an exciting time. These water settlement claims are historically stagnated. They're mired in litigation and disagreement and bad blood. But however, we're proud to say that this year alone, which is absolutely unprecedented in water rights history for settling with tribes, is that 4 tribes have settled their claims with Arizona. We've worked with them to settle those claims and get those settlements to Congress, where they're actually being considered now.
Okay, so what's a water settlement claim? What does that mean? Is it that a tribe didn't get their allocation of water and that they're going back to the government and saying, I didn't get 10%? So what is it?
Well, just to give you an introduction, by and large, tribes' water rights are not settled. Their claims to water are typically not settled, and tribes would historically go to court and begin litigation to settle those claims. However, another avenue to establish and to quantify water rights is to engage with water users to settle those rights, to come to an agreement to quantify water rights.
So if somebody was a farmer up at Navajo, they would be able to make a claim? Or am I not understanding it correctly?
Yeah, so tribes would seek to settle claims collectively as a people, as a community, and as a tribe, as a sovereign nation.
Right.
There was one person settling a water rights claim from the tribe, unless, of course, that person is on non-trust land or allotted land. Then those would be settled individually.
So then each tribe then would go to their tribal members and say, okay, we know that we've got, let's say, 50 farmers and we've got this and that, and then they would take all that information and then do the water settlement claim. Is that correct? Sort of. Sort of.
You've got, but in addition to agriculture use, there's also tribal communities that are essentially municipalities, villages that also need water, and those are also, you would also consider residential water use and then commercial development too, and all of that.
Okay, so same as like the state. So since it's a sovereign nation, it would be the exact same thing. It would just be multiple sovereign nations filing the water settlement claims. Okay. Okay. I think I understand. So what issues are the tribes facing with water?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? It's stark and disparate. It's lack of infrastructure. There's not infrastructure largely the tribes. There's nothing there to carry the water, to get the water to tribal communities. And so you have disparities like 30% of Navajo people on the Navajo Nation don't have access to water through infrastructure. They have to. That's where we see the stories about hauling water, buying water tanks, and hauling them to homes. I remember myself growing up on the Navajo Nation, visiting friends and family and at community events where you had the pail of water at the entrance. You had a 5-gallon bucket of water and then a tin pail with a washing station there. So we grew up knowing how to use that water, and we grew up with the constant reminder that water's precious, water's life, and don't play with the water, use it wisely. And so those are the issues that tribes are facing. And as the negotiator for the state for water settlements, Director Tom Bishotsky, and along with the leadership and guidance of Governor Hobbs, has really worked to lead settlement negotiations with tribes for the state. Most recently, Director Bishotsky accompanied tribal leaders to Washington, D.C. Last month to support the congressional approval of 2 of those water rights settlements.
So it sounds like growing up, you respected water probably more than non-tribal communities, knowing that you had to be a good steward and take care of it and pay attention, that you would have to haul it, versus just like in the city, people just turning on their faucet and expecting they're going to get what they want. Is that an accurate reflection, do you think?
That's a fair statement, but I think it's only by mere fact that the disparity was there in our face. Like, we could see that there was not an easy access to water, or there was sometimes no access to water. And so overcoming those challenges really necessitated a greater respect for the resource.
I think that's pretty critical, and I think that's an important message for everybody that they need to make sure that you're paying attention to that. And it is, I don't know if you'd call it a renewable resource, but it's definitely a finite amount, and you can run out of water or it can be greatly reduced. I don't know. You think that's also a fair statement?
Absolutely. We understand that water, especially in the Southwest in these desert climates, water is precious and water can be scarce. And so it's really important to the state and to the agency as we work to meet our mandates and meet our goals to protect and conserve these resources. We have a conservation program here at ADWR that works to provide a really integrated approach to water conservation for our varied water users across the state, right? So conservation assistance, outreach and education, information on greater conservation resources across the Southwest and across the United States, and then regulations such as the AMAs, as we call them, the active management areas where we regulate groundwater usage. And so we really encourage and promote the wise and efficient use of water through these resources and tools. We want to make sure that we provide water conservation assistance, as I said, to individuals even, right? And so into communities across the state, and to connect with tribes and partner with them in getting this message out and collaborating not only with tribes within the state, but also with partners across the greater Southwest and across the United States to ensure we're protecting and we're using water wisely.
So I've got a personal question for you. How do you conserve water?
I conserve water.
I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I actually use the water mills. I buy my jugs of water. I don't buy bottled waters because of the amount of plastics used there.
Yep.
It's so funny. I always say you move to the city for the conveniences, and yet here I am. I still haul 5-gallon jugs of water weekly for use at home. We don't have grass. We have gravel.
Okay.
And I think at this point, those are the two things that I do here in the Phoenix Valley at home to conserve water. Back on the Navajo Nation, there's not any kind of I have cornfields at home, Susan. We're an agricultural family, and there's dry farming. We always talk about the innovations of the resiliency of our Indigenous communities. We practice dry farming, and that's where you irrigate first, and you flood the field, and then that's it. That's all she wrote for water. You flood the field, it soaks in, and you plant and you pray, and you just maintenance and take care of the crops, and you just wait for monsoon to come and Creator to give your crops water. So that's how I conserve water here in the Phoenix Valley, and then back at home on the Navajo Nation.
And you're using the seasons and the monsoon to do watering and not relying, solely on Colorado River or any other water source. So pretty important, and I think conservation is really important in the valley, and that people pay attention to how much water they use, and if a faucet's dripping, I know that can amount to hundreds, if not thousands, of gallons of wasted water. So if somebody's interested in conserving water or learning more about the tribal water settlement claims or just anything, can they reach out to your office? Or is there information on your website?
Absolutely. Our website is a treasure trove of information around water. azwater.gov. You can find all of the links and resources that we talked about today, water facts, water supply facts, it's a landing page to all of the other intricate details, research, data, statistics around water historically and even for water today. I myself can be reached at my email address. It's really simple, dcarr@azwater.gov, dcarr@azwater.gov. And I'd be happy to connect anyone with, if, let's say, Indigenous community members had questions about water settlements. I'm happy to talk with them, share information, and particularly, I believe the Navajo Nation does have a website for their water settlement too. So happy to point people to resources.
So if somebody wanted to see that, they could contact you. You could point them where they could find information, whether it's on the Navajo Nation website or however they could find out about the claim, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if go ahead. I'm sorry.
That is settlement is Yavapai Apache Nation just recently completed. They're the fourth one. So if any of those community members have questions, I'd be happy to connect them with leadership at Yavapai Apache Nation to give them more information about that too. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one more. It was the four. Which are the four tribes? Yavapai Apache, Navajo.
Well, Yavapai Apache Nation in and of itself on its own, and then three tribes together collaboratively, the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe in one big collaborative settlement.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the time, the information, and I am so glad you're there. I think it is so critical to have a tribal liaison there, and people can reach out to you. They can learn more about the tribal water settlement claims and just get information on conservation and everything. I'm thrilled that you're there. So thank you for all that you do.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm so happy to be able to serve our communities in this way and serve the state of Arizona.
Coming up on Native Talk Arizona, Dr. Len Necefer will tell us about the new documentary, Megadroughts and Indigenous Voices. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with two locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Lacey Sandoval. Dr. Len Necefer is the founder and CEO of Natives Outdoors, a successful Navajo-owned company that sells products that appeal to outdoors enthusiasts, as well as telling the Indigenous story of the outdoors through documentaries. Hello, Dr. Necefer. It's an honor to have you back on our show today. It's been a while.
Yeah, excited. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm excited to be back.
Great. Let's start off with an introduction of yourself.
Yeah, great to be talking to folks again on Native Talk. It's been, a couple years. Len Necefer Yana Shad not told didn't touch sheet initially. Scottish Special Chain don't take in Che Auto Romanian Nationale. I'm from a number of places, but home my family's home is in Red Valley, Arizona. But Tucson is home for me now, and I've been running Natives Outdoors for about 7 years now. And yeah, we've been doing a lot of work and just using human-powered movement and just using that to tell stories. And using that as a way to elevate and talk about Indigenous perspectives on the outdoors. And it's been really fun and a really great adventure.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit more about what have you been doing since you were last on a show?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been really focusing on is film and media and storytelling. So using, filmmaking equipment, whether that's taking photos or making short films or longer films to shape the narrative around Indigenous peoples and the environment. And so a lot of our work has been focused on that intersection. And largely it was because, selling outdoor products is a challenge and it's hard and takes a lot of money, and filmmaking turns out takes a lot of money as well. But in our network of that we've been able to build, we've been able to work with a number of really talented Native filmmakers that are incredibly talented athletes or adventurers or folks that can go out into these really exquisite landscapes and bring back and tell stories about our changing world with climate change and the multitude of other things that's occurring globally. And so we've really invested in that and put a lot of time and resources into buying equipment and, of course, training folks. And it's been fun. It's allowed us to go see incredible places, but more importantly, share incredible stories from these places as well.
We were reading the article in Mountain and Prairie that summed up what you've been doing. We especially like the statement that by melding your professional expertise, personal interests, and cultural heritage, you've become one of the leading voices advocating for Native American representation in outdoor recreation and conservation, and that you have a unique ability to educate and inspire. And your message is striking a chord with a large, engaged audience. This leads us into today's interview. Please tell us about the work you've been doing with NOVA.
So last year I met a Native producer at a film festival in Jackson, Wyoming called Jackson Wild, and I was there as part of a larger film project that I've been working on about the Colorado River. It's going to be a feature-length film about the river and its wildlife and the human history of that, and that's been an incredible project. And Chris Neighbors approached us and said, "Hey, we'd love to do a story focused on, some sort of story about climate change and how it's impacting the communities that you come from, Native communities in the Southwest." And from making that larger film, we had a lot of footage from around the Colorado River and a number of its tributaries, like the San Juan River, which forms the northern border of the Navajo Nation before it meets the Colorado River. And one of the pieces of the story that we've been seeing through our work in the snow sports industry and also in doing river work is the impact of climate change on snowpacks. I think one of the things that it's a little challenging to express is that climate change is not everyday weather. Climate change is the larger scale changes in patterns and weather. Climate change is the larger changes in temperature patterns, in rainfall patterns, and all these larger scale processes that occur above us. And one of them you can see pretty directly is our snowpacks. Snowpacks, in many respects, need to have colder temperatures. There needs to be a more consistent snowfall pattern in order for these snowpacks to build. And why snowpacks are so important is because they are the lifeblood of our rivers. And down here in Arizona, where I live in Tucson, we're 300 and plus miles away from the Colorado River, but a majority of our water comes from the Colorado itself through a canal called the Cap Canal. While many folks will say, well, I don't ski, why should I care about snow? It's like, well, if you drink water, you should probably care. So one of the things that we always say is that skiing and snowboarding is a very expensive and privileged sport, but that's not why people should care about snow. Snow is such a critical component of our ecosystems and of the water that we drink, and it's important that we understand how they're changing. And so what we're seeing here in the broader Southwest is there's less consistent snowpack. It's melting a lot more quickly. And before that snow melt can reach the river, more of the ground has been sucking up that water because we've been seeing low snowfalls and low precipitations that are basically deviating from trends that we've seen for thousands of years and are much lower, and means that the ground is much drier. So it's going to present problems for people. It's already presenting problems for these ecosystems, but one of the things that we wanted to do with this story was to tie all these threads together of the impacts on our rivers, the perspectives that we have as Native peoples who have called this place home since time immemorial, and do it in a way that really brings to the forefront this story to the audience that Nova talks to.
Could you give us an overview of your film Megadroughts and Indigenous Voices? I know you gave us a pretty in-depth overview of water issues today. Could we take a step back and could you tell us, are we currently in a megadrought?
So what we've experienced, or what scientists are saying we're currently in, is known as a megadrought. And a megadrought is effectively a multi-year, and in our case, a multi-decadal drought over a large area. So basically, we're receiving less snow, less precipitation over many years. And that has a direct impact on natural springs, on plants and wildlife, on and on and on. There's a rippling effect, and you begin to see changes in the ecosystem. So we decided in this film that we're making with PBS to tell the story through the voice of Dr. Carletta Chief, who is a professor at the University of Arizona and is a former colleague of mine who is a hydrologist and has worked on drought and climate change issues extensively, and is a known expert in this field, which is really awesome to be able to have that connection. But we sat down and did an interview with her and basically told this story about what's happening across the Colorado River Basin and what's occurring, and most importantly, the ways in which Native peoples in this region understand that this is not the first time that we've seen this scale of drought in the Southwest, but understanding that knowledge has important value for shaping and forming policy as we move forward. And so we have Carletta, through her story and knowledge, guide us through that she guides us through currently what we're in right now.
And how have the people in the region historically dealt with megadroughts? And what can we learn from their experiences?
There's, I don't want to speak for, we as Native peoples all have our own stories, but, I can speak from what I know. But, there's been a variety of ways that's occurred. In some instances, it's actually being forced to move, migrate to other areas where there is more water, where there is more accessibility to water resources, to grow crops, to drink. But I would say more broadly, when you look across the cultures and peoples that we come from in the broader Southwest, we all have cultures that place an incredibly high value and significance upon protecting and conserving water resources. And I would go as far to say that that's not an accident when you live in a desert. But when we start thinking about the policies that drive management of the Colorado River, of climate change, of other sorts of things, it's largely by societies who are not from societies and peoples and cultures who have not grown up in this context, and who have not who are just learning about the complexities of what this ecosystem means when it comes to water. And so I think, at least in pulling upon those thousands of years of knowledge and bringing that to the fore and saying, well, we've been here before, this time's a little different, the causes are a little different, but when we just look at the impacts on water availability, water quantity, etc., there's analogous examples to be learned from, and part of that is examining how we relate to the water around us.
What specific ideas and practices from the Navajo tradition are worth highlighting when dealing with water scarcity?
I think broadly, when we look at traditions or practices, basically it's the way we relate to water. When your basis of relating to water is a sacred entity that needs to be protected, needs to be respected, that basis then leads to a lot of other decisions around policy, around conservation, etc. And I would say that at its core is like critical. And not all cultures and societies relate to water in the ways that we do, and that means that their decisions are different. And I just want to highlight that that's like we have a lot, basically there's no one culture is right when it comes to this, and really it just provides, like, we do have a unique perspective here, and that drives a lot of our views about what should happen. But we live in a multicultural society, and so really we have to come to the table understanding that there are many ways of knowing here, and we have a knowledge set that is valuable to that conversation.
What are some actionable steps individuals and communities can take to manage water resources better in prolonged drought conditions? When we start looking at the things that people can do in their everyday lives, it really depends on, we're not talking to policymakers here necessarily, but I would say if you're someone that drinks water, which is all of us, hopefully, just knowing where your water comes from and where that water molecule falls out of the sky and starts its life before it gets to your faucet or gets to wherever you use it is really important. And having a connection with that hydrological cycle just by doing that research. And so if you're here in the southern Arizona area, there's two places where your water is likely coming from. It's coming from rivers, which largely is largely driven by snowmelt, some groundwater seeping in, or it's groundwater. It's water that's accumulated underneath the surface for thousands, if not millions of years. And groundwater is a finite resource, and it takes a long time to recharge, and snowpacks hopefully will continue to come every winter. But those, just knowing that will go a long way in understanding like how finite and how precious of a resource water actually is. And
we should all know that being in the desert, but when we realize how far it has to come to get to us, it puts it more in perspective. I would say, if we start talking about policymakers and state policymakers, federal lawmakers, tribal officials, we're really we're really at an interesting moment in time where we're having to figure out what to do about the Colorado River. And I would say, especially in those larger scale negotiations, tribes have not been at the table, and they have actually been actively excluded for close to 100 years. And we're at a point now where we're potentially facing crisis with the Colorado River, and I think it's incredibly important that tribes be given their rightfully deserved seat at the table, and that we continue to work towards fulfilling tribal water rights and ensuring that the things that we know as Native peoples are included into the science and policy that drives these decisions.
What messages or feelings do you hope viewers will take away from watching Megadroughts and Indigenous Voices?
I really hope that two things is that folks who watch this will learn about what's happening to our snowpacks and rivers, but most importantly, I think just being inspired of how beautiful the landscape and waters that we happen to be able to be connected to actually are. One of the things that we're incredibly proud about with this film is just the level of cinematography that we've been able to develop in the few years that we've been working on filmmaking, and really we hope that folks can watch this and be inspired about seeing these places for themselves and building a relationship with these watersheds and these places that they may be connected to through the water that they drink, or simply they have an investment in just seeing the beauty and history of the landscapes that we all live on.
What plans do you have for the future?
So from this work, this is our first film that we've made with PBS. We're hoping to be able to work with PBS more in the future. And really, our work has been really like where we're trying to head from this particular project, is we see these film and storytelling projects as a way to connect our communities to these landscapes, and then also has been an amazing opportunity for us to cultivate and develop talent of Native folks to be able to tell these stories from these places. And so one of the projects that we're working on next is a story about oil drilling in the Alaskan Arctic. So last month I spent close to 3 weeks in the Brooks Range, sort of north central Alaska, and floated about 120 miles of a river with 3 other Indigenous folks, and brought cameras and brought storytelling equipment. And our hope is to bring that landscape and that place and its history of being connected to these Native communities up there back to the world, and to show what's happening with climate change up there, with permafrost that's thawing, and but also the intense pressures for development that are occurring as well. And so yeah, that's where we're headed, and really, these stories have taken us to incredible places, and we're just really grateful that we're able to continue to do that.
And finally, how can our listeners learn more about your work, and how can they contact you?
So if folks are interested in the work that we do and the storytelling that we work on, our website, natives-outdoors.org, is a place where our storytelling, both commercial filmmaking and then also documentary style storytelling, is housed, and people can contact us through there. And And then also on social media, Natives Outdoors as well.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, Dr. Necefer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and 90.7 FM KRDP. Our executive producer is Susan Levy. Sound engineer is Javier Quiroga. We hope you will tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please reach us at nativetalkaz@listen2krdp.com.